Hello and welcome to In Conversation,
a series presented by Arts from Home featuring discussions with local Toronto creators. I'm Alyssa.
I'm Jaya.
And I'm Savannah, and these are the personal stories behind professional and community success. Today we are talking to Angie Aranda. Angie has an extensive background in community arts, partnership development, event management, and communications, with numerous years of arts administration experience and currently the manager of Neighbourhood Arts Network, Toronto Arts Foundation. She's an active member of the arts community, particularly through her photography practice. She holds a double honors BA from York University with a focus on film and video and communication studies. Thank you so much for being with us, Angie.
Thank you.
So growing up, what was your journey to decide to pursue the arts? And like if you have, any experiences from like your high school or childhood that you want to talk about, that would be great.
Well, thanks so much for this question. I thought it was so lovely to think back and reflect to how arts really inspired me as a child. And I came to Canada when I was 3 from Colombia, so an immigrant child. And for me, my first point of contact with art was through filmmaking, or cinema. And so it was my grandmother and my uncles and my mom who showed me or exposed me to Latin American cinema. So when I'd watch all these amazing black and white films it was a blend between like telenovelas and musicals, but all black and white. And I didn't know the difference, that was like really old fashioned, but I was just so immersed by it. And it was my connection to culture, language. And so I just always felt very rooted, even though I wasn't, like my environment was very Canadian, and I didn't have very many access points to my own culture besides my family. So it was something that I just, it fueled me. And I just wanted to I loved the idea of storytelling and that connection to being able to touch other people's lives and inspire other people through art. And that's how I decided to pursue it. I created my own films at home with my cousins. And then I went into university, studied film. And I'm still so passionate about film, but once I went into the sector, decided that I wanted to focus my work around community, because that's how I felt like it jived more with my own personality and my own values and priorities at the time. So I did make that shift. But I love the work that I do now. I end up working with filmmakers and artists of all disciplines, and we run a newcomer artist program. So then I'm connected with artists from Colombia as well. So I'm exposed to so much wealth and histories and richness that I'm just happy that I ended up transitioning to nonprofit arts.
Yeah, I just also wanted to say that I love telenovelas. So as soon as you said that, I was like, yeah. I mean, you definitely know them, probably more of the classics, but I just love it so much. So yeah, I could definitely relate on that side. But my question for you is that, seeing as Toronto has one of its best qualities is that it is diversity. We talk about that a lot in the city. It's really synonymous with Toronto. And this diversity has such a positive effect on the arts community. So as a manager and coordinator with the Toronto Arts Foundation, how do you take into consideration inclusion and diversity in your programming and outreach?
So Neighbourhood Arts Network started about 10 years ago. And it came about because of community consultation. So it was in consultation with community that it was designed. And so the work that we've done from the beginning has always been through an equity framework. And so we don't look at diversity specifically in how we work with community or how we develop programming. We look at within the concept or the lens of equity. whose voices are not heard because of systemic barriers. And so we work with communities to address those barriers in the work that we do. So that looks like co-designing programs with that specific community, making sure that we're in consultation with them, that we're accountable, we're responsive, and that there is this idea of reflection. It's like, is the work that we're doing actually important to that community? And if it's not, then we need to change it. But I think the piece that is most important in the work that we do is around being critical internally of how we're doing things, and knowing that we've never reached a spot where it's like, yeah, we're doing everything perfect, because we're not, and we're constantly needing to improve, because there's always barriers from an administration point of view, and we need to push that bar. So we create a safe space for accountability internally, so that my staff can come up to me, say, hey, actually, this was problematic. I don't like this because we're not considering these perspectives. And so we make sure that there is that space that we can be honest with each other and grow. And we've developed tools to be able to help not only ourselves, but also our community through our equity toolkit, Arts and Equity Toolkit, which really helps artists and arts organization break down like what it means to create equitable programs and activities for community, and how to work with communities in a way that really will be beneficial to not only that community, but to the arts practice and the arts sector.
Amazing. Yeah, it's oh, sorry, Jay, go ahead.
No, the only thing I was going to say to that is I think that like with everything going on, that's really all, that's a big part of what we're asking people to do. Like, you guys are really taking that to the next step and actually taking the action. And I think like that big piece that you said was equity. That really stood out to me. Equality is one thing, but equity is a whole other. So I think what you said was really powerful. And I think what you're doing is also very powerful in terms of bringing people together and making sure they're comfortable in the space that you guys are providing.
Yeah, it's very nice to, you as a person, but also speaking on behalf of the group that you work for, talking about not being perfect, because I think a lot of the challenges that like not people who are not people of color have right now is they're like, oh, should I do something? I don't want to say the wrong thing. And there's a lot of awkwardness around it. And it feels like, oh, maybe it's better not to act than be wrong. So it's nice to hear you say that that's where like we can accept not being perfect, because it's definitely part of the process, and the openness to learning and being accountable to people who have different experiences than us. I think that's really amazing. And kind of to jump off that is obviously the work that you are doing is a combination of arts for art's sake and then arts for the purpose of social change. And as an organization, you're obviously directing arts for social change, but there are a lot of artists who are individual people right now, and probably many that you are working with in this moment, that aren't sure how to use their voice as an artist to be active in that way. So do you have any advice? It's a bit of a tricky question, but do you have any advice for individual people who are trying to use the art that they've been using in their life as their voice to help promote that change?
So I was thinking about this question, and we invited Malaika Wari to do a workshop last year on Indigenous relations with newcomers, and because we want to give newcomers the tools and the history of what being in Canada is, and understanding history is so important to be able to move forward. And one of the things that really stuck to me when she was leading the workshop was around doing that self-work before you ask others that you want to help or that you want to be in solidarity with them. And I think that's really important because we can't expect those communities, are Black, Indigenous, people of color communities, to do that work for us. So I think that's the opportunity to like look at, even if you think you know things, it's take a moment and make sure that you are doing that self-work first before you go and ask, I want to help or I want to collaborate. So personally, I just feel like do self-work, talk to your family, to your community, and there is a lot of power that you can do within that circle. And then if you want to collaborate with other artists, then build those relationships. And if you know of folks but you just don't know how to connect, Neighborhood Arts Network is a great place to connect with us, and we are always connecting folks with other people, because that's why Neighborhood Arts Network came about, was to really connect artists and connect the art sector to each other. And this was like pre-social media, where people really needed that support. And so we're very happy to help connect folks. But then also make sure that the individuals who are interested in doing this type of work, that they take the community's lead on how that community needs support. So is it an artist that wants to create the poster for a movement, or just avoid imposing and just asking, what do you need? And it's just so that it's safe for everyone. And so that, because a lot of communities that are doing this work right now, there is a level of distrust that has come about because of everything that they've experienced. So I think it's knowing that and being sensitive to that. I think that's the best way to go about it.
Yeah, it sounds sort of analogous to the way that you started the Neighborhood Arts Network, by, you said, community directed and through community outreach. So, if you can do that on a project level, it makes sense that it would be the same practice for an individual person to just go and ask, and not without doing the work first, but see what the community needs before. Yeah, that's great. That's really great advice. Thank you.
No problem.
Yeah, I just, I really liked what you said about, as much as we want to be like asking what these people need, and, kind of being like asking for people's even almost like emotional labor to like explain things to us that we might not understand. It's like there are just so many resources out there for us to be able to educate ourselves, and this time is just so important to do that. So that's definitely a theme that's been coming up for me, especially like trying to be an ally as well, and having people be able to call me out if I do say something that's as sensitive as I want to be. As you said, there is a level of distrust, and I think that's okay for that to exist, and just allowing the space for that to exist, and be uncomfortable, but also be aware about like how much space you're taking, and allowing people to also like tell us what's going on rather than imposing what we think they need, all those things. So
exactly.
Especially like as the Black Lives Matter movement has picked up, I think these are the conversations that are so interesting, and they're so like subconscious, and you can't even like what you were saying, it just brought so much clarity to me, because I was like, oh, there's just so many layers to this. It's not just about having conversations with, it's not as like black and white for what to do. So
exactly.
To kind of jump off what you were saying about how the Neighborhood Arts Network started, connecting community members together. During COVID, what does this look like now that we're, isolated from each other? And is there any programming you folks are working on right now to connect the community through your programming? What does that look like, in this new digital space?
Something that we're currently working on now is our mentor in residence program. So when during COVID, a lot of artists and arts administrators were a bit stuck with how to transition their work digitally. And then also there's that level of, okay, how do we make it accessible too? And so we partnered with North York Arts, Urban Arts, Tangled Arts, Aerosol, like tons of folks who are interested in donating their time with this program. And that's one of the pieces that I found so powerful, was that there's all these people that came together to support the arts community in the best way that they knew how, and that was through peer-to-peer mentorship. And so our initial thinking was, okay, this program is going to probably be like 3-4 weeks, and now we've booked sessions all the way until September. And so we're looking at now, how do we use their mentoring residence program to connect it to community, and can our community members be mentors to help artists and arts organizations think about what does community engagement look like right now? And so really giving our leaders in the community that spot to tell us what they need. So that's in the works right now, but it's the mentoring residence program is one of the most powerful programs that I've been a part of recently, because it's all these folks that have come together with, like, we have barely any money allotted to this, only accessibility funds to support ASL interpretation and other accessibility supports, but otherwise everyone is donating their time, which has been so powerful. And those are like the main components.
Amazing. Do you mind if I just ask two clarifying questions quickly?
Sure.
Just the term newcomers, I can assume what that's in, but I was just wondering if you could clarify what you mean when you say newcomers.
Yes. So newcomers to us, it's anyone who's been in Canada for 7 years or less.
Okay, great. Thanks.
New Canadians.
And then the other one is if I'm, in terms of the mentor-mentee situation, if someone's interested in getting involved, is that something that, like, we obviously are reaching lots of musicians and lots of artists in Toronto with that. So if there's people who are interested in volunteering for that, is that something that's possible, or is it
Absolutely.
more? Yeah.
Yes.
So where would you direct interested volunteers?
So we our mentor in residence page on our website. We have a dedicated page about the program and how to, if you want more information, to contact my colleague Eva at torontoarts.org. She manages the program.
Great. Thank you so much. So, on the Toronto Arts Foundation homepage, the vision of the foundations is listed. And I mentioned this at the beginning, but I really appreciate the recognition that art is worth making for the sake of art on its own. And obviously that impacts the community and individuals in the same way. But I do just think art is beautiful, and I think it's worth doing. And I guess my question is, do you see anywhere in your work a relationship between people who are taught to respect the arts community and art as an entity in itself, and then a connection to more positive respect for community itself? I don't know if that makes sense as a question. Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Great.
So I found this really interesting because, so I think the art for the sake of art is really powerful because it's really focused on individual artists or collectives who are looking at the world and reflecting on it or criticizing it or exploring in storytelling. And so community who connect to that can really see themselves in that. That being said, I think there is a level of colonialism that comes into play that acts as a barrier to access. So, and also it's who is accessing the art and how are they accessing the art. And there's that, I was a part of on a panel and a colleague of mine, Asad Raza, said to me was, that a lot of folks who are people of color have limited time to access art spaces. And sometimes the art spaces aren't accessible. And perhaps going into one gallery and exploring the show for 10 minutes is good enough. And they've got their they were able to explore and really take everything they need to take from it. But there is this unspoken rule of what it looks like to appreciate art. And I think that can exclude a lot of folks from the appreciation of art for the sake of art. There's a lot of systemic barriers that prevent people from accessing the art because they just don't have the time. They don't have the financial means to connect with the art. So I think acknowledging that is really, really important. And I think community arts is so important, especially now, because it really will help us recover and transform out of this situation that we're in, this COVID-19 bubble we're in. And I think that there is tensions between community arts and the other disciplines, because again, there's this like colonial experience, an impact that the other disciplines have had, while community arts, it's working with community, and each community is different. And the journey is what's important. Obviously the creation of work is matters, but it's how you get to that is of utmost importance for community arts. And so I think the two can exist and can be really powerful, because I see a lot of artists connecting with their community and working with community members to create artwork. And I think it's really powerful and beautiful. But I think it's acknowledging that the arts sector has a lot of barriers for a lot of communities to be able to access. And I think that needs to be acknowledged, and we need to do better.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you mentioned time and financial resources, but even while you're talking, I think about education and the way that I was educated about art and what Canadian art looked like, and it's just a very narrow view of what exists. And then in the same sense, when I think about the work that a lot of people are having to do now to catch up, we didn't know, the thing of we didn't know. And it's partially because we've been living in a bit of an ignorant bubble that's completely sort of unfair. But also I think about if that had been more of a part of my schooling, if I had been educated more specific. I grew up in a small town, largely white town, and if that had been more of a part of my education, the gap in how much learning I had to do to catch up would be so much smaller. And so I think that hits. I definitely, we do need to do way better.
Yeah, we work with a lot of newcomer artists who come to Canada and say, well, I need to make my work Canadian. And we don't want that.
Yeah.
But there is that pressure of like, I need to assimilate, I need to be more Canadian, and this is not Canadian enough. And there is that fear that if they present their work, then it's folk art, or it's not Canadian enough, or it's too racialized. And we need to dismantle that, because that's harmful.
Thank you for answering that sort of winding question in a really meaningful way. I appreciate it.
No problem.
Can I just ask a quick question? Just because, sorry, this is off to the side. I was just really curious when you said like artists are, finding like they have to make it more Canadian. Like, what does that necessarily mean? Because when I think of Canadian, I'm thinking like this is perfect for you because you are a newcomer. Like our big thing is that we have so much work to do, but our biggest thing and stereotype, especially in Toronto, is that we're diverse and we bring in so many people. So I feel sad that they feel that way. Like they're coming into this city that we pride ourselves on being so amazingly diverse, and they're coming in and feeling like, no, this is not Canadian enough. So what does that mean when they're saying that?
Well, I think it's one, they go to the galleries and then they see Canadian art, and that's not reflective of them, because I think there is a huge barrier. And I think museums and galleries, they need to do a lot of work in including diverse voices and including Indigenous arts, and because that's also part of the Canadian fabric of Canadian art. And so when I think newcomers go to different establishments like AGO, like, do they see themselves reflected? Do they see that type of work? And maybe they don't, and maybe that's why they're saying, well, this is art, this is Canadian art, and my work doesn't fit into that. And there's that pressure wanting to fit in and wanting their work to be relevant to Canadian audiences. So I think that's where that pressure comes from. While we encourage them, no, this is, you take your Canadian experience and reflect that in your work, and that becomes Canadian art. But don't do it the other way around.
Right. Thank you for clarifying that. Yeah, that's to me, I almost think that's so wild, just because I'm like, you are supposed to come here and show what you want. Like, that is the Canadian methodology. And I realize that that's my perception of Canada, or I shouldn't even say Canada, I should say Toronto, because we know not all of Canada's like that. That's my perception of Toronto. But you know, it's sad that they come here and they don't feel that same way. Whereas, like, you know, I'm trying to make sure that that's not something that people feel. So yeah, it's good to know that.
So Jaya, Savannah, and I are all very, you know, passionate about community and what it means to be, you know, a good community leader. And I think you touched on a lot of things today that I will definitely like take moving forward to in like my own methodology. But, you know, for leaders, especially like in the arts community, what is something you'd like to like say or think, like something that's like super important you find, like especially right now is a time of changing, for them to know and spread in these communities?
There's a few things that is on my mind. One, just because of what we're doing at the Toronto Arts Foundation, even our colleagues at Toronto Arts Council, it's that we still need to do better, and that we need to ask for advice and look to others to help guide us. And that means our community, the people that we're wanting to connect with, and the individuals or the community that we want to support through programming. And so I encourage folks to work with those communities and co-design programming together. Also, the Toronto Arts Council, Toronto Arts Foundation, we have anti-Black analysis tool that really helps look at your work and see how accessible is it to Black-led artists and a Black-led arts organization and Black artists, and how can you do better in your work. So if folks are interested in that resource, we can share that with you all. And I think it's just continuing to question, I think, our work and our position, and use our platform and be bold and unapologetic in order to be equitable and to support voices that have been marginalized and have not been heard. I think this is the time for real change, and that it is up to us to do better and to give that platform up to those folks that need it.
Amazing. Yes.
That was perfectly packed up in a beautiful bow.
Yeah. I love because Alyssa goes, can you just tell us something really important? Just say something really meaningful. Just really give it a good...
should have just said that as a question. Just say something important.
Yeah, and you just did it. I was like, I wouldn't be able to pull that out. No,
exactly.
That was so great. Thank you so much, Angie. It's been really amazing talking to you.
Yeah, it was great meeting you guys.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to a collection of these resources that you've suggested. And I hope that our paths will cross again soon.
Yes, I hope so too.
Yes, amazing.
Thank you so much, Angie.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.